Hello, my friends. How's it going? Today, we're going to be talking about investing in your support system. And I'm actually not talking at all about coaching here. I'm really talking about the supports that you need in place to help do all the things that you do. As I mentioned last week in the episode, 10 Things I Wish I Knew as a New Attending, which, if you haven't listened to, after you're done here, go back and listen to that one. One of the things that I see in women physicians is that we often feel like a hot mess inside, and we often have no idea that to everyone else, we look like we've got our stuff together, right? We look like we have all the answers. We look like we don't need any sleep or rest, right? We're just these hyper amazing humans who don't need help and can just take care of everything themselves. The problem with that is that we internalize that. We start believing we don't need help. Um, Unfortunately, it's been reinforced by times that we have needed help and we have not received it, right? We are often socialized to believe that we should be able to do things on our own, especially during training. But the role of women in society has generally been socialized as you are the helpers, right? You are the people who do the helping. You are not the people who receive help. And so, what we're talking about today here is how do we start to go about utilizing help, understanding that this can be new for us, understanding that there's some things to know there that will help it to be a more successful and positive situation so that you actually feel like you get the help and support you need rather than asking for help and someone does what they think that you're asking but it's not at all what you wanted, and you just throw up your hands and you say, oh, I'll just do it myself, right? How many of us have done that? I know it's not just me. I know that happens over and over and over again. But part of all this messaging is that no one else lives inside your brain. No one else is in there, just you, right? So you have ways that you know how to do things, ways that you like to do things, ways that you believe that things should be done. And whether or not those are helpful beliefs, they impact our experience of asking for help from others. So let's start by just thinking about this in the realm of support from people at work. Now, I 100% acknowledge that every single one of us is facing different challenges in terms of support at work. Some people have no staff. Some people have a frequent turnover of staff who they never get to know. Some people probably have lovely staff. Um, and I know part of the culture of the organization that I left, sometimes we would have, some really amazing superstar medical assistants, for example, but the vibe from some of the older school ones was, no, that's not how we do things here. And they would stop stepping up. They would stop partnering with their physicians or their clinicians, and really sort of try to fit in. But ultimately, it's like a totally dysfunctional, toxic culture, right? There are all those scenarios out there. So let's acknowledge that. But I want you to think about for yourself with the people that you do have, what are the things that we can start to figure out how to get help with? Okay. So the first question to ask yourself is that what are you doing at work that doesn't require your licensure, that could be done by somebody else, and who might be able to do it? Now, this is going to vary tremendously, right? Because some of the tasks might be clinical in nature, right? You might choose to ask your medical assistant to start helping with some form of documentation, with some of the history gathering, right? There might be some specific tasks that require a little bit of clinical skills knowledge, right? You're not going to ask your front desk person to do that, but think about for yourself, like, what are some of these tasks that don't require you, and who might be available to do that? And again, if you can't think of anybody, if you're just like, "Ugh, no one's going to help me, no one's going to help me, there isn't anyone," just notice that that is probably a little bit of a traumatized part of your brain who is used to not getting help. Take some breaths. It's okay. This is unfortunately more common than I would like. Just for right now, focus on what are some things, some small things even, that I might be able to get off my plate. And you can just leave it at that for the time being. Now, let's think about, kind of what these things are. So what are some tasks that you want to get off your plate? Like, what actually needs to be done? Why is it important? Right? We want to make sure that it's reasonably important. Otherwise, does anybody need to do it at all? Right? There may be, unfortunately, lots of situations, right, where we find ourselves doing something. We don't know why we're doing it. We don't know why we would delegate it to somebody else. And we realize, oh, hey, that's a stupid, unimportant thing that actually doesn't need to be done at all. That's actually a great learning, right? Of like, oh, okay, I'm going to stop doing that. That's a separate point. Okay, so we can think about, okay, what might I want some help with? And we can think about, why is this task important, right? Is it something with documentation, right? Documentation is important because we need to, keep an accurate record of what's going on with our patients, and we need to be able to submit that along with a bill in order to get paid for services, right? Those are some simple, straightforward whys that might be coming up. If it's something simple like labeling specimens, right? Why is that important? It's important because it's really important that whatever piece of tissue we're collecting is appropriately labeled, right, with the patient's identifiers, so that it gets sent off to be evaluated, and we can make sure that this result is pertinent to that patient. That seems obvious, and yet people might not understand, like, why are you getting so upset about, this unlabeled specimen? Well, because if we haven't labeled it, right, if it gets sent off to the lab and it's not labeled and no one knows who it's from, or, yeah, I'm pretty sure it came out of room 4 and that means it's so and so's. But, whether it's a pap smear, a skin biopsy, I don't know, a blood sample, right? It's really important that we know who it came from, because if it is abnormal or if it's normal, we need to be able to communicate that to our patients, right? Wouldn't it be horrible if we got a specimen report back? I don't think this would happen because they wouldn't even look at it, right? That you found out that one of your patients had a melanoma, and all you know is the day the sample was collected. But let's say you took 7 skin biopsies that day. Someone has a melanoma and you don't know which one it is. That's an exaggerated example, but you can see my point that people don't necessarily understand why a task like that might be important. When we think about maybe non-clinical tasks, we might think about scheduling pieces, right? It might be really important to you that certain kinds of appointments or certain kinds of patients be scheduled in a certain way. And you see that that's routinely not happening over and over again. Explaining to the people who are responsible for the scheduling in a way that makes it clear, why is it actually important that they're scheduled that way? What is the difference? Because again, these things may not be obvious to people who would like to help us, people who are perfectly capable of helping us, but if they don't understand the why, then they may leave out important details. And then you have more work and you have more frustration and stress, and it feels like no one is on your team, right? It may take an explanation, right? Be clear, be kind, be informative, so that you can get the help that you need. And then you can get it done the way that you would like it to be done. All right. It's really, 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 really helpful for you to write down the instructions, or both, write it down and record it. So recently, I have been onboarding a new virtual assistant. She's going to be helping me with my social media, helping to hopefully grow the podcast some more. And she has to have the task, right, of learning all of the steps, right? I've got some programs that she hasn't used before. She is learning my voice. She's learning how to be the support for me. And thankfully, because I have worked with other support people in the past, I have written documentation of how this task is done or that task is done that I can share with her. A lot of people will record onboarding videos, right? So if there's some process that someone needs to be helping you with, you can actually record a very simple video that explains, what the task is, that explains the why, that goes through the step-by-step instructions of how to do it. Now, sometimes, depending on what the task is, right, that might be a video where you're showing someone how to do something. It might be a video where you've recorded, kind of like where the cursor moves on the screen and which buttons you're pushing. Those kinds of instructional videos, or writing that down in exquisite detail, doesn't take a tremendous amount of time, but I promise you it will so help, right? Because people learn at different rates, and a lot of these jobs have high turnover. A lot of the people who will support us turn over their jobs quite frequently, right? That's true of medical assistants and sometimes front desk staff. It might be true of any kind of assistant that you are going to have. We want to make sure that we're doing a good job with the individual people who are helping there, but we also want to help get the support that we need by investing in the role, right? Investing in the role is saying it's important to me to have great, I don't know, medical assistant. It's important to me to have a great virtual assistant, right? Supporting me with some of the administrative tasks. In order to have great people, sure, it matters who the individual I hire is, but it also matters that I've created helpful instructions, right, that I can update periodically on how these tasks are done, why they are important, how to actually do them, so that it's very easy, right? I can still sit there and walk them through it, but then they can return to the resources, right, written or video, and they can read them and watch them over and over and over again, especially if it's something that they don't do very frequently, right? This allows for us to be less stressed when someone, rotates out of that position and someone new needs to rotate in, right? We've got that library with us. But it also just helps to create a better working environment, right? It's not you barking at them how to do something, right? It is clear instructions, right? How do we do this? How do we be successful? And sometimes you can even allow them to update it, right, as things evolve. All right, what else is important here? Another place that we struggle is not expecting to or being willing to coach someone through being your support person, right? Again, we have often these great and deeply entrenched ideas of how things ought to be done, how we like things to be done, and no one else automatically knows that formula. Even if people are watching you and they're in the room with you as you perform it on your own, they don't understand all the nuance. They haven't had all the training that you've had, right? We need to help them, right? Not only learn how to do it, but we also need to observe them sometimes. We need to set expectations. We need to help them understand why. Again, we need to coach for understanding, question for understanding. We need to monitor their performance. We need to offer praise and support for their growth and correct mistakes. Now, I think there are lots of resources that are out there that go through that in a more formal. There's probably lots of acronyms that I don't actually know that can take you through that process. But I think what so often happens, right, is that we ask someone to do something. Again, we have our own ideas of how it ought to be done. And maybe that's 100% important and legitimate, like labeling a medical sample before it goes off to the lab needs to be done in a certain way, right? There have to be multiple patient identifiers, right? It has to be coupled with the lab order. Like there might be some very specific things that have to happen with it. But sometimes it's just we have a preference for how something is done. And if we don't spell it out for people and explain why we like it that way or why it's important to do it that way, people are not in our heads. Our brains, their brains, your brain, all of our brains like to do things the easy way. So if we look at a process and we think, God, that looks horrible and complicated, I think that this will be good enough. If they operate that way, because their brain is just normal human brain, and you look at what they produce and you're like, nope, 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 that just won't work. And you decide that therefore you can't have help because help will never do the task well enough to, kind of meet your liking, you're never going to have the help that you need. This piece is really critical. We need to invest some time here in supporting someone to learn how to do it the way that we would like it to be done. We need to praise and offer encouragement. We need to offer corrections, right? It depends very much on what the task is, who the person is. Think about if we're teaching a child how to do a chore, right? You might say to your child, I want you to empty the dishwasher. If you don't give them any other instructions because you think, they've seen me empty the dishwasher a million times before, you might be very disappointed at what happens. Maybe they'll just put all the dishes on the floor or on the counter, right? They didn't understand when you said to empty the dishwasher that you meant to actually put the dishes away in the places that they go, right? Again, silly example, but that happens too in our work setting. We need to be clear on what the steps are. We need to be clear on what our expectations are. We need to monitor and make sure that they understand, that they do it correctly. Praise and encourage them so that they feel supported as they learn how to do this task and they feel like they're a part of the team. And correct, right? Thank you so much for, labeling the specimen. I noticed that we didn't blah, 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 blah. Next time we need to make sure we do that because otherwise the lab will send it back to us. And, we run the risk of not collecting the proper sample and not being able to check it to see if it's cancerous. I don't know, something simple like that, right? This all assumes some things that are also really important to understand. People want to help you. Does every single human that you encounter want to help you? No. But the people that you work with, right? The people that you encounter who are working in healthcare chose to be there for some reason, right? Somebody chose to become a medical assistant. Somebody chose to become a phlebotomist. Somebody chose to become an RN. Yes, it is possible that they chose that because they needed a job, but a lot of those jobs required a fair amount of training. And they could have made more money by not doing that training and going to do something else, right? People want to be a part of healthcare. Yes, that might be sometimes because it's considered to be a stable career. I don't know how true that is these days. But, for such a long time, right, people said, oh, go be a physician. Oh, go be a nurse, right? There's always going to be a need for that. That is a very common belief, right, that there's stability in healthcare. But there's also this very human desire to help others, right? And you might feel that you alone are the only person who cares about helping others, but I guarantee you it's not true. Yes, when we are feeling burned out, when they are feeling burned out, it may be hard to see that they are there to help others. But when we include our team, when we include our support people in this shared agreement that we are all there to be part of the care team, that we are all there to work together to help our patients, we create a tremendously supportive and caring environment that fosters growth, that gives you the help and support you need. But you do have a role here. You have a role in educating, setting expectations, letting go a little bit of your need to control and do everything, which comes from a very valid place often, right? We need to see our supports as part of the team. We need to treat them as valued team members, right? When we do that, when we model that, we will see that we start to get the support that we need. It's not an easy one and done process, but because we are all here listening to this podcast, you could be listening to music, you could be watching the Celine Dion documentary that everybody's talking, you could be doing a lot of other things, but you're here, right? And we come here to talk about the things that make our work hard. One of the things that makes our work hard is us maintaining the belief that we are the only people who can do things, that we can't get the help that we need. We need to let go of that. And part of that is embracing this idea that we are part of a team, that we are leaders on the team, and that we have this give and take role. And when we invest in our supports, we get back good return, right? Which allows us to stay focused on the things that need our licensure and provide great care as a team to our patients. People want to feel like they are a part of your team. This is some investment, right, of your time and energy. It may take you sitting to write down or record some things. It takes you maintaining an awareness of who's helping you, what do they need help with, what questions do they have, what corrections do they need, what praise and encouragement do they need, right? All of that is going to take some of your time and energy, but it is an investment towards building an easier future for yourself, right? Because the better you get at doing that, the more systems that you create that help to onboard future team members, the better it all works. I cite this study so often, but again, going back to this primary care study that came out in August of 2022 in Medical Economics, the average primary care person needs 26.7 hours per 24-hour day in order to accomplish all of the tasks that are asked of a primary care physician. With adequate and robust team support, the physician's work drops to 9 point something hours per day. 26.7 down to 9 something. Clearly, we have work to do in letting go of some of the tasks. We have work to do in coaching for performance, in setting expectations, in inviting people to be a part of our team. It's not without its challenges, but my friends, this is so worth it. All right. So I want you to think about what would happen if you were able to create this work environment for yourself where you had the support that you need, where you have an engaged team that wants to help you take care of your patients, that you have the experience of being this kind of, a leader, not a named leader. You might not be the leader of your clinic when you do this work, right? But you are a leader because you are demonstrating team leadership, right? Even if it's within just a dyad partnership, right? You are creating an identity as someone who is thoughtful, caring, concerned, and invested in helping others so that they will help you. When we do this at work, we will start to naturally start using these skills elsewhere, right? You will use these skills in people that you invite into your home to help you, and you should do that, right? Think babysitters, nannies, au pairs, right? Think people who come in and clean your home, right? Anybody who helps you with supporting some of the operations and logistics of all of the stuff that's got to happen at home, right? When you are showing up as this kind of person, right, it is easier to get the help that you need in that setting. When we are doing this with our kids or our partners, right, where we are setting expectations, stating, kind of what the goals are, checking for understanding, praising, offering corrections, we are going to help them as well to be successful, right? Kids, little kids, they're often very eager to help us. When we push them aside, I'm so guilty of this. When we push them aside, say, no, 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 mom's got it, right? Um, we're telling them that mom is the only person who is able to do this task, right? They feel disempowered. And yes, we do that because we know it might be faster, it might be done our way, it's going to be done more correctly. Um, you know, when it comes to things like, I don't know, like chopping vegetables, right? Which they often are so excited to get a hold of that knife, right? It might be a safety thing, right? I don't have time for that, or you're too young. When we are constantly pushing our kids off, eventually they stop asking to participate in chores, right? And that's not okay. We need to be raising humans who know how to take care of themselves and know how to support a household, right? And be a part of a family. In so doing, right, they have to learn how to do chores, even boring chores that they hate. When we are incorporating these skills, we are going to have much more success with not only getting the job done the way that we want to do it, right, but empowering them to become independent living humans, right, which is the goal, I think, of having it. I should say it is a goal. It is a part of our job as parents, right, is to help raise humans who can take care of themselves. The ripple effects here are really important. The ripple effects in your life, the ripple effects of other people, right? Let's empower people to learn how to do things. And in so doing, get the support that we need, get the help that we need so that we are all in this together. Yes, you will need to invest some time and some energy when it comes to getting help at home, right? You're going to need to invest some money there. That might even be true at work, whether you are a business owner or in some kind of a setup, right, where you need to financially support someone else in order to get the help. There are many circumstances where that may pop up. Choose to do it in this way, right, so that you get the help that you need. You have success even in situations where there's a high turnover, right? Investing in the beginning, right? We learn to do that with our patients. We need to do it with the people who support us as well. All right, my friends, that's what I've got for you this week. Welcome to my new virtual assistant, Blessy. So glad that you are here. Until next time, take care.